Welcome to Films Apart, the podcast where we poke fun at buried flops, unearth hidden gems, and explore timeless classics.
So grab yourself some popcorn, sit back, and let's break these films apart.
Today's episode, we're looking at the 2003 critically acclaimed film Tiptoes.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know what this film really was. There wasn't a lot to take away from it.
No, not a lot. Who was in it?
Who was in it? So we had Matthew McConaughey, Kate Beckinsale, Peter Dinklage,
and with the role of a lifetime,
the one and only Gary Oldman.
How did we come to choose this film?
I saw a clip about it online, about the trailer more specifically, which sold the film as a sort of rom-com with bad humour.
That's how I saw it. When you showed me the trailer, and I thought, they're trying to make a rom-com out of this. Feels somewhat politically incorrect, and it also didn't feel like it was of the noughties. It felt like it was older.
Yeah, very outdated.
Yeah.
So Gary Oldman, part of the reason why it felt taboo, I guess, was because Gary Oldman actually plays a person with dwarfism, and his twin brother is played by Matthew McConaughey, who doesn't have dwarfism. And
his name was?
Stephen.
And Gary Oldman's character was Rolf. I'll tell you what, shall we do, if I do a synopsis, because it's quite difficult to do a synopsis of this film, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Yeah,
so if I do a synopsis of Matthew McConaughey, and you do one of Gary Oldman, and then we'll try and show how they convene.
Okay.
So it starts off with Matthew McConaughey's character, Stephen, and his girlfriend, played by Kate Beckinsale, Carol. And you feel like it's the story of their relationship, that they're together, and she gets pregnant and she wants to have a baby, and he's unsure whether he wants to have a baby, and we don't know why. We just presume he's not ready. But then as time goes by, we find out that actually all his family are dwarves.
Yeah. Apart from him, he's the only...
Apart from him, yeah.
Everyone else has the dwarf gene within them, like, activated apart from him.
Activated, yeah. Although there is one moment where Matthew McConaughey declares, "I'm a dwarf," later in the film, which is just bizarre.
Yeah, it was very odd.
So that's how they come into the film anyway. How does Rolf come into the film?
So Rolf is Matthew McConaughey's twin brother.
Of course.
But the characters are twin brothers. He's not. Although the age gap is very weird in it.
10 years.
Yeah. And we're meant to buy Gary Oldman as Matthew McConaughey's twin.
I guess he's aging more quickly.
Yeah. He's not looking great for his age.
No.
Compared to Matthew.
No, Matthew's looking,
pretty good. I remember you pointing out that one of your favourite scenes was when he gets topless.
Well, I actually I wondered if this is where it came from, this whole idea of Matthew McConaughey with his shirt off.
Yeah.
Feels like there's no need for it.
No. We're getting off track anyway.
We are, yeah.
Gary Oldman, his role as Stephen's twin brother, he is almost like a like a guide, I guess, for Kate Beckinsale's character, introducing her to dwarfism in an odd way. And he has...
Well, how does he come into the film? Though he comes into the film on a motorbike.
Well, it's like a trike.
A trike,
It has like 3 wheels, doesn't it?
That's true. With Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, Maurice,
yeah.
Yeah. And they pick up this homeless...
Not prostitute.
She
gets mistaken as a prostitute and beats someone up for it.
Yeah.
Patricia Arquette.
Yeah, Patricia Arquette. Her character, is it Lucy? I believe she's called Lucy.
She will always be Patricia Arquette to me.
She plays this sort of hippie drifter, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she becomes...
Well, Morris picks her up. She's clearly attracted to him. In fact, from the moment she sees him, she's like, wow.
So it's blown away.
And he's there looking all kind of smoky with his sunglasses on, looking
Yeah.
cool on his bike. She hops on the back.
On the bike.
On the bike.
Not him. Not on him.
Well, not yet. That comes later on. And then they go to this convention.
Yeah, convention for little people.
A little people convention.
But they don't go inside. They sort of hang about outside.
What they kind of, she's like, she goes to go inside, and what does Matthew McConaughey says? Don't steal the food. What was that
I
about?
remember that.
And then they went inside, and then the next thing you know, they're getting kicked out for stealing food because she's like, you can't steal food. Food belongs to everyone because she's a hippie.
Yeah.
Remember?
Not that bit.
No.
No.
I think it was a pivotal moment, and you might have missed quite a lot of the
Maybe
plot
that's
by
why I couldn't
missing
follow
that.
the film.
Maybe this is where you got confused, yeah?
Yeah,
Because it
maybe.
made complete sense to me.
Yeah.
So then after that, they get on. They leave the convention, and they go to a hotel.
Yeah, so they head over to a motel, and there's actually quite an odd scene where when they're getting the room, for no reason at all, the motel keeper, they ask if there's any rooms available, and he says, no prostitutes,
Yeah,
meaning Patricia Arquette's character.
presumably.
Yeah, well, it could be either, yeah.
Yeah.
It could be Peter Dinklage or Gary Oldman. And he says, after that, they go, how dare you, she's not a prostitute. And he goes, I'm sure I can squeeze an adult and 2 children into a room, just belittling Peter Dinklage and Gary Oldman's characters.
Yeah.
That felt very odd to me.
It was very strange. It was one of many strange moments.
Yeah.
Not least the ones that happened in the hotel room.
Yes. So in the hotel room, Peter Dinklage is he's getting some.
Getting it
down.
on.
He's getting on, getting down to business.
With Patricia Arquette.
Yeah, not Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Although he could be getting on with himself in the bathroom because he disappears for a little bit.
He goes for a shower. He said, what does he says? He says, don't get it on
Yeah.
because I need some sleep.
Yeah, he wants
And then
to
he goes
sleep.
to have a shower, and you think to yourself, well, this is a perfect opportunity, Peter.
They get it on.
Get it on now
Yeah.
while he's in the shower.
Get the business done with.
And then you ain't got to worry about it.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy. But then that scene is just that scene.
Yeah.
We know exactly how long Gary Oldman's in the shower for, and he's not in the shower
It's
for
total
very
of about
long.
2 minutes.
He comes out with a towel around him and says, keep the noise down.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you just let him,
Yeah.
stay in the shower for a
He
little
must
bit?
have had a sink wash.
Clearly,
must have done.
clearly didn't have
Yeah.
a wash. I think he splashed his hair and he came out with a towel on,
Yeah.
basically.
Basically.
I think he was trying to catch him.
I think that's what he was hoping for.
We're going down a dot. We shouldn't go down this road, should we? So anyway, in the strange existence of this room, all of a sudden, Peter Dinklage's character, Morris, gets very ill.
Yeah.
He starts going, oh!
It's a good
It
recreation.
was quite good, wasn't
Yeah,
it? I
that's
almost
quite
sounded French with it as well.
Yeah.
'cause he's French, isn't it?
Quite
He's
stereotypical.
like, oh, oh.
This was it. Leading up to them getting it on,
Yeah.
he was doing some sexy French talk about sort of French foods and wanting a crepe.
You see,
It's one line that he says, oh, I want a crepe.
you see, I don't remember that. You see, I remember him getting kicked out for stealing food, which you don't remember, and you
No.
remember him talking about French food. So there's something
Yeah.
going wrong with the food,
the food's not memorable in this film,
Yeah.
which is an issue.
which is probably the reason it fails
yeah,
overall.
yeah, definitely.
So anyway, he gets. In all seriousness, it does start to feel like the film gets a bit serious, and he becomes quite ill. And Rolf panics and calls a doctor.
It's quite a horrific scene.
It
as
is
well.
quite
There's
horrible, and you
quite a
wonder
bit
what's
of
going
blood.
on. There's blood, and he's calling the doctor, and Morris goes, "No doctor, no
Yeah.
doctor."
He seems to be very opposed
With his-
to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Rolf puts the phone down.
Yeah. I think he gets something thrown at him which pisses Rolf off and makes him...
There's a cushion, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you're left thinking something really bad's going to happen to Morris in this film. Like this is the foreshadow of
Yeah.
of his death.
Yeah.
Something related, possibly to his actually physically to his dwarfism, or
Yeah.
to the mental state of that, because he's quite a destructive character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's almost in this
Self-destructive.
sort of denial of his
drinking
condition, I suppose.
drinking morphine
Yeah.
and whatever else they mixed with it.
Yeah. But he doesn't go down that route.
He doesn't go down that route, but he pisses Rolf off, and then Rolf leaves.
Yeah.
So Rolf's like, I need somewhere to sleep.
Yes.
So he goes round to his girlfriend.
On and off girlfriend, I
Yeah,
suppose.
we didn't know it was his girlfriend. Well, I didn't know it was his girlfriend at the time, but he goes round to her house, knocks on the door, and she's like, "Oh, hello, Rolf, are you all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I need somewhere to stay." And he goes in, and he starts asking her about who she's, getting it on with. And then he goes into the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he's in the bedroom, some guy comes and knocks at the door. Some tall guy.
Yeah. Not a dwarf.
And then
Sort of Gary Oldman hides under the presumption that this man sees me in the room of his now girlfriend and is going to assume something's going on. So he just hides in a different room. The now boyfriend walks in, having an argument with his...
cops a feel.
Yeah, he's
randomly
quite passionate about her.
But he's like, he's asking for money, isn't he? He's asking for money, and he says, "I'll pay you with..." What does he say? He says, "I'll pay you with the G-spot or something." He does.
Something like that, maybe.
It's just bizarre. Yeah. So anyway, and then he goes into the bedroom.
He's basically prostituting himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, to her.
Yeah.
And he's quite upset when he comes across Rolf because he's been buttered up by... What's her name?
I've no idea. But he goes in the room. Rolf's in the room.
Yeah.
He goes mad. Rolf tries to give him some money because he knows he wants some money.
Yeah.
And he's like, "How much money do you want?" And he doesn't take any money. And then he beats Rolf up.
Yeah. And it's quite a difficult scene to watch, which is undermined by they play some almost like slapstick music over the top. And
I didn't really notice that. I was more trying to figure out what the hell was going on here.
Yeah.
I didn't even really fully understand that it was his girlfriend until later on.
Yeah.
So anyway, Rolf's out on his ear again.
Yep.
And this is the journey of Rolf, I guess. And then Rolf moves on to the next place. And the next place he goes to is his brother's, which is Matthew McConaughey.
Mm-hmm.
And he knocks on the door, and his Matthew McConaughey's girlfriend, played by Kate Beckinsale, Carol, answers the door, and he explains who he is. And she's shocked because she didn't realise that he had a dwarf brother.
I thought you just started saying he didn't realise he owned a dwarf.
And that they were twins, which I didn't realise either. So I was just as shocked as Carol.
Yeah.
Especially that they were twins.
Yeah.
And anyway, that begins the friendship.
Yeah. Begins the friendship. Yeah.
Yeah. With
quite passionate
with
friendship.
Rolf and Carol. And it also sparks off the issue that Carol has, which is that, well, she asks Rolf straight away, doesn't she? She says, "Well, if you're a dwarf, are his mum and dad a dwarf?" Mm-hmm. Which I think is a strange question to ask. That wouldn't be the question that would pop into my head. I just wouldn't do that.
No.
I might want to find it out eventually, but it wouldn't enter my head straight away.
It's almost like the first thing that she asks him.
Yeah. And he says, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got an issue, she's pregnant. Is the baby going to come out with health issues, essentially? Yeah. Or has she got an issue because she's prejudiced? We don't know this at this point. Anyway, Matthew McConaughey comes back on the scene, and they have a big conversation about the baby, and they talk about it, and he tells them that, I come from a dwarf family, and he's worried about having a baby because of this, and he preferred to adopt, is what he's saying.
He doesn't want to run the risk of his child having health issues.
Let's get rid of the baby. She didn't want to get rid of the baby. She's got it in her mind now, no, this baby's happening, dwarf or no dwarf.
Yeah.
And so Matthew McConaughey disappears for the first time in the film.
Not for the last.
And he's doing some training as a firefighter. This is when he learns to firefight. So he starts shouting at somebody, and then he gets told off by somebody
for shouting at people.
And you're like, what the hell's this got to do with anything? And
it doesn't.
It doesn't have anything to do with anything.
No.
Like, you'd think that the producers who cut this film, they could have cut that.
Yeah. So there's a thing with this film that basically there's a longer cut, 150 minutes,
we didn't mention this, did we?
Yeah. And basically the original writer and director was fired after handing in the 150-minute cut, and the producers basically re-edited it to make it come across as more of a sort of rom-com, whereas it was meant to be quite a serious, dramatic piece before.
A 90-minute rom-com, which I suppose in 2003 was about the size of most films.
Yeah.
So 2 hours and 30 minutes for a film in 2003 wasn't that common.
No.
Unless it was like some sort of epic.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably the producers thought they're not going to make any money off this, so we need to reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a ruthless cut that leaves the film bearing no resemblance to anything. You know, there's no story in it, or very little that makes sense. So then what happens?
Kate Beckinsale's character Carol is introduced to various characters from Gary's life that have dwarfism, and she finds out a bit more about the sort of condition, what it means for a person's health. She also learns that like people can be happy with dwarfism and live a fulfilling life and have a family, which she accepts very quickly. There's never really a moment where she questions the severity of bringing a child into the world with dwarfism, I feel, and what it might mean for their health and the pain that they might be in.
She just sees that dwarfs can be happy. She has a dwarf baby.
Yep.
And they live happily ever after. The end.
And by they, we mean...
But let's not get to that yet.
Okay.
So obviously that's not quite how it goes down. So first you've got the issue of they need to be married. Let's get them married. The producers were like, we'll put the wedding in it. We've got to have the wedding in it. You know, let's not cut the wedding.
No.
So they introduce Carol's parents to Stephen's dwarf parents in a really strange family meal barbecue scene.
Yeah.
Where when Carol's mum and dad first walk in, the dad seems absolutely fine with it. Mm-hmm. He's happy, he just gets pissed.
Yeah.
And but the mum looks disturbed. There's something bothering her, and you obviously assume that the thing that's bothering her is the fact that they're all dwarfs, and she hasn't told them.
Yeah.
Which also you'd think she probably would tell him.
Yeah.
Seeing as she's had that shock, she'd be like, "Listen,
while she
just prepare yourself."
I don't want you walking in there and like just gawping.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's disturbed, and they're having a meal, and they're sitting down. The mom's telling the dad not to drink. They're feeding the dad drink anyway, and they're having a whale of a time. And then the mom all of a sudden blurts out, "I'm sorry, I can't not say this. You're not going to be happy, but I need to say this."
Yeah, I know we spoke about not like bringing this up.
And Carol is looking distraught, and she looks like she's crying. She can't deal with it. No, Mom, don't say this stuff. Don't bring the topic up. Don't bring the elephant in the room up.
Yeah.
And what does she say?
The wedding between Carol and Stephen must be a Jewish wedding if their grandparents are to go along.
And everybody kind of sighs.
Yeah, with relief.
And laughs. And you're like, what?
And she's sort of just clueless as to like she doesn't know what the issue is.
No. And everybody's happy about this. And they're like, yeah, of course we'll have a Jewish wedding.
Yeah.
Cut to the next scene.
The Jewish wedding.
Stamps a glass, mazel tov. They're married. And then all of a sudden, they're having the baby.
Yeah.
It jumps to that very, very quickly. They get married. The baby's being born by a dwarf doctor. And...
Yeah. I feel like everyone connected to the story in some way
is a dwarf.
Is a dwarf,
except for the lead dwarf, Gary Oldman, who's not a dwarf.
Yeah, he's not a dwarf, but he is playing a dwarf.
Yeah.
Very well.
A superb performance. Roll of a lifetime. So anyway, then they have the baby, and then the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Let's face it. So the baby's born. The baby's a dwarf. The baby's going to have problems. The next scene, they're back at home. The baby's crying. Now, I don't understand this. What if a baby's crying? Babies cry. That's what they do.
Yeah.
But Matthew McConaughey's like, no, he's crying. You know why he's crying. Say the word. Yeah. Say the word. You know why he's crying. It's like, I'd be like, he's a fucking baby.
Yeah.
Of course he's crying. And also, you're running around ranting like a madman. You're scaring the shit out of it, which she does kind of say.
Yeah.
But actually, he's like, no, say the word, Carol, say the word.
Yeah. Say it's because he's a dwarf.
I'm a dwarf.
Yeah.
That's when he says, I'm a dwarf. I'm a dwarf.
But he's not.
He's not a dwarf. Why is he saying I'm a dwarf?
No.
And then he storms out and he's like, I can't deal with this. And he leaves her on her own. So then she's left on her own. So then Matthew McConaughey's kind of out of the picture and we're like, well, what's going on now? What's going to happen now? Carol's been on this kind of journey of learning about dwarfism in a weird kind of way. So she goes to Rolf's house in the woods where Rolf, who's also a writer, you find out at some point in the film.
I think it's at this point.
at this point, and it's like, she goes, how's the writing going? He goes, oh yeah, it's going good. I've got something syndicated in a few papers, and Morris, the Frenchman's there, and he's like this Marxist who's like, yes, he knows these bourgeois shit. He done some stuff like that. Anyway, he's really annoyed about the fact that he's writing for like bog standard newspapers, and so he goes, Carol, Rolf, this is Carol. You can stay here. Stay here for a few days.
Pays back the favour for letting him stay on their sofa.
Yeah. So she stays there, and then a really creepy thing happens. Like they're in the.
Yeah,
she goes to bed. He sneaks. She goes to bed, and the baby's making hardly any noise. It's more like.
There's a big argument between Peter Dinklage and Patricia Arquette's character, where they break up, storm out. I think Gary Oldman's character, Rolf, is worried about the baby, who, like you say, is not making much noise. So he sneaks into her room and sort of takes the baby.
I didn't get the feel that he was worried. He just wanted, whatever he wanted. Whatever he wanted. He snuck in. He snuck into the room.
He snuck in menacingly
in the quiet of the night.
Yeah.
And he goes to the baby.
Child.
And he takes the child. You don't know whether she's watching. You don't know. She's like, oh, bless him. Yeah. You don't know if that's going on. There's a kind of feeling it might be. Then he walks out. Then she stirs immediately.
Yeah.
And gets up, sees the baby's gone, and she's like, oh. So she gets up and has a look, and he's downstairs.
Yeah.
He limps downstairs.
I thought
Baby
he
in his
started
arms.
drop the baby.
Well, there was a bit, it was a bit of a concern, wasn't it? He didn't look very safe in his hands. No. But then the baby's in his hands, and she comes down. She goes, well, no, I can deal with this. And he's like, no, you get some rest.
Yeah.
I'm not very good with babies, but I've got this.
Yeah. He's a gent.
So he's a true gent. So she goes back to bed. And then the next thing you know, Matthew McConaughey comes back on the scene. He turns up there, and he's like, listen, I've learnt the error of my ways. And she's like, no, you don't want the baby.
Yeah.
He's like, I want the baby.
He wants to step up.
I want the baby. He doesn't say that, but he's impressing that he wants to do the right thing. Yeah. And she's like, no, I don't believe you.
No. Doesn't even let him stay and say hello to the baby.
No. And so he goes off, and Rolf's like, you're my brother, I love you, kind of stuff. But he goes off anyway. And then it's just Rolf, Carol, and the baby. And you're like, well, this is weird. What's going to go on here? Maybe he's going to go away again and he's going to have a second kind of revelation. He's going to come back and go, oh, no, I know what you meant now. Yeah, you're right. I know I came back and said that I cared about the baby, but I didn't care about it in the way that you thought I should, so now I do. But that doesn't happen.
No.
Instead, what happens is she's in a bedroom and Rolf comes up and he goes, are you all right? And she goes, I'm not going to sleep tonight. They say everything, don't they? They say everything 3 times. That's how it feels to me in this script. And he goes, let me show you something.
Dirty bastard.
And you wonder what he's going to say, and you think he's going to take her down into a basement. I don't know. But anyway, he takes her downstairs, and he takes her outside. I don't really know what he shows her, because then she's like, oh, look at the stars. The stars are amazing. Yeah. And he looks up at the stars, and the stars look pretty cool. And then she turns to him and goes,
you can kiss me if you want, Rolf. And he does. He goes for it.
And what happens then?
No, that's it. That's the film.
The credits roll?
The credits roll, yeah. That's the film. And my immediate thought was, what the fuck just happened? And what was the point of all that?
I think what we established from this was all along... I mean, the protagonist, if it was anybody, was Carol. And she had a fetish.
Yeah, that's what I got. She fetishizes dwarfism.
I didn't really get that, but I know you got that from it. But I think that she probably was, in a way, more the protagonist than the others. But
I think that she gets to a stage where she almost... It becomes like a fantasy for her and a bit of a gimmick to have a child with dwarfism.
Well, actually, you on the kind of fetish thing, there is that conversation that takes place between her and Matthew McConaughey, where he's like... Mm-hmm. But she's like, when you were younger,
Yeah.
Did you ever get it on with
because he was
with
surrounded
dwarf?
with people with dwarfism.
Because they were all
Yeah.
dwarfs surrounded, but presumably they were his family members, so that's a bit... But anyway, he was surrounded by dwarf people. And he goes, what does he say?
He admits that
When
there
he
was
was
one
12?
occasion when he was about 12 that basically experimenting with some of Rolf's friends. They basically had a circle jerk with him and a bunch of 12-year-old dwarves, and
she goes, I'd love to have seen that. And you're like, I was like, did I hear that right?
She'd love to have seen
a 12-year-old him with a bunch of 12-year-old dwarves jerking off.
Yeah.
So you might be onto something with the fetish thing.
So.
I think that maybe. I wonder if that's what annoyed Matthew Bright, or maybe it was even worse. Maybe in the 150-minute director's cut, it was
leaned into it more.
He leaned into it more, and that's what he regrets about it. That he doesn't because actually I was looking at some of his previous films, and some of his previous films are they're all a bit kind of exploitation. Quirky, weird. One of them's Shrunken Heads. Mm-hmm. It's comedy horror about 3 preteen boys who, after being murdered by a vicious gang, are resurrected via voodoo as shrunken heads.
Okay.
Freeway, which is a black comedy crime thriller exploitation film based on Little Red Riding Hood. Modern Vampires. I don't know. I think that's just vampires.
Modern
Ted
ones.
Bundy, and then he finished his
He did a
career
Ted
on
Bundy
his magnus opus, Tiptoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's Gary Oldman.
And he's still alive.
He's not worked since.
He's not worked since. 72 years old. Matthew, if you're listening to this podcast, please call in.
Yeah, call in
to the number that we will never give.
Yeah, we're not giving.
But come to Bath.
Yeah, come to Bath. Knock on some doors.
Come along, and we'll do an interview with you, and we can talk about what the 150-minute
what
cut
should
was.
it have been?
What should it have been, and what was the real?
Was there as much dwarf sex in it as well? Because there was quite a bit of public dwarf sex in this film.
There was, yeah.
There was 2 or 3 scenes.
Gratuitous dwarf sex.
One of which was on a park between Peter Dinklage and Trish Arquette, where you can see some children playing in the background and they just start getting it on.
Another one was at a party in a fucking conservatory.
It wasn't an empty conservatory. There were people just having drinks there, as if there wasn't.
But even if there weren't,
a grown prince
it was a conservatory and everybody was outside anyway.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
whether they were in or outside, it was going on.
Yeah.
It was going on, and that was with a famous person,
famous.
Whoever
He wasn't famous. He was like a B-Tech prince.
Yeah.
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 That got off with Ralph's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. And obviously you've got the first one.
Maybe it's the film's sort of a journey about Ralph being this once sort of pro-lover, having lost his virginity before Matthew McConaughey, which was quite a big point in the film.
That was mentioned around the same time as the 12-year-old jerk circle stuff.
Yeah. I think it was sort of about him coming back to his prime, because he gets cucked quite a few times in the motel room.
Yeah.
His girlfriend gets fucked by 2 other guys.
This is an interesting take.
So he thinks, you know what, I've had it. If my twin brother can't appreciate this amazing woman as he's got, I'll have her for myself and his kid.
He's like, I can't get Patricia Arquette because Morris, the Marxist. I can't get my girlfriend because the weird
Prince and the guy that beat me up
Prince person. And so I know what I'll do. I'll take my twin brother's wife and child, and make them mine.
Yeah,
and that's
and he does it. So good on him.
Good for him. And I think, I think, if I'm honest, I think it's becoming clear now why Gary Oldman decided to choose this role of a lifetime, and I think it probably has something to do with Carol and the actress who played her.
And when he found out who played her.
Yeah, because actually Gary Oldman's been married 6 times or something, so he's
a bit of a player.
He's a player.
I didn't know that
he's
about
a player.
him.
Yeah.
He's a Rolf.
He's been married.
He's a
few
real
times.
Rolf.
He's a real life Rolf. Well, no, Rolf is more sensitive than. Well, I don't know if he's more sensitive, but he's softer, I would say,
than Gary.
Yeah.
He met Gary.
I don't reckon Gary would stand for this, girlfriend fucking in the conservatory nonsense.
No,
Gary
he
ain't
wouldn't
gonna
have
be.
that.
He,
No,
he ain't gonna take that shit.
No,
No way
no.
is he gonna take that shit.
no. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Unless that's why he's had 6 marriages. He's walked in on each of them having public sex in a conservatory at a party.
And maybe that's why he decided to do the film, because he needed to, deal with his
Yeah, it's
demons.
therapy.
So to sum this up, or in fact to finish this now, because I think we've highlighted how good of a film this is.
Yes.
Let's talk about possibly the most important point of the film and concerning point of the film. Is it okay for Gary Oldman to play a dwarf?
Some have compared it to blackface.
Yeah. Now I'm not against actors playing different things. There's obviously boundaries
Yeah.
that you just don't cross. But I do feel like the whole point of acting is acting.
Yeah.
But I have to say that even though I feel like that, I found it quite hard to watch
It
him
wasn't believable.
amongst all the other dwarves.
Yeah,
On
it's not
his
like
knees.
they cast any other dwarf as like
On
it.
his knees,
No,
hobbling
no.
along.
Yeah.
I think it was a bold choice,
It was a bold choice.
and I think that he wouldn't do it today, and I don't think anybody would do
Although
it today.
he spoke about it in interviews and said that it was
I'd definitely do it again. I hope there's a sequel. Tiptoes 2.
Tiptoes. Tippy toes.
Tippy Toes, yeah. And it's about his nephew who's his kid now growing up.
Yeah. Apparently, in an interview, Gary Oldman, I think it was with possibly with Film 4, he recalled the part and said it was a glorious part, a dream of a role, but it wasn't an immediate yes.
So he did.
He thought on it.
He thought about
and
it, but like
he
I said,
decided to do it. I think that's the worrying part. Do you think that the portrayal of Ralph being played by someone who doesn't have dwarfism was more offensive than the stereotypical bad French character? Or is it okay because
I think that it was okay that Peter Dinklage did him with a French accent, even though that French accent was the sort that you did when you're at school in like a
for
school
a few
play.
minutes?
But I did feel like the character was written like this kind of political, stereotypical Marxist character
Yeah.
that was very. That's the thing that I had more of an issue with. I
Yeah.
just thought the character was just shit.
Yeah,
A shit
along with the rest of the
stereotype.
film.
Yeah,
the film
Peter
was
Dinklage
just
was
shit.
okay.
Yeah,
So what? Okay, let's finish it on a score. Go on, let's popcorn it.
okay. So I'll be rating it with sweet popcorn. Lewis, you'll rate it with salty popcorn, and then we'll bring it together for a sweet and salty score.
Yeah.
So my sweet score, I'd say a 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
I think there's some stuff there that's interesting. Like you say, some of the Gary Oldman, it's not like he acts badly. He just doesn't have a lot to act with, I think.
And anything else in it?
There was some quite unintentionally funny scenes where Gary Oldman was quite clearly sewn into a sofa and they just had a sort of puppet as the rest of his body.
True.
That'd give it the 1 point.
And the dwarf sex, obviously. You've been talking a lot about that when we haven't been on recording. You've been talking a lot about the dwarf sex, so I'm surprised that you didn't mention that in your summing up.
I wish there was a bit more. I know I made out that there was an issue with it, but I really did quite enjoy that, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's give it a 2. 2 out of 5. No, 1 out of 5.
Okay, and I am going to give it a 1 out of 5. If it was out of 10, I'd probably give it 2, because I do feel like there was some intent there. I feel like
it lost its way.
There was potential, and there was some performances and some moments in it that were better than the film.
Yeah.
But as it's out of 5, I'll give it 1. So that is 2.
So it's still 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10.
Sweet and salty.
And we're going to put any butter on top of that?
Let's not complicate it.
No, we'll leave it butterless.
Okay, well, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Film Apart with myself, Kyle Cave.
And me, Lewis Coleman.
Next week, we'll probably be looking at some Christmas movies.
Yay!
Yeah, we've got to figure out what, but some possible candidates.
Oh, don't say. We'll leave it as a surprise.
It'll be a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.